Wholeness and balanced vibration to everyone, and thank you for tuning in to Esoteric Radio. Today is Sunday, June the 5th, and we have quite a show today. Actually, we're lined up for an hour and 30 minutes. The time was increased just to give us a chance to get this message compressed in such a short amount of time. Today's show, the title is The Antithesis, Where You Go When You Die. And today, I definitely wanted to introduce a new form of instruction or a new form of teaching, basically in light of a lot of the things that I've learned within the last 2 weeks. And it's really impressive that when you have a certain amount of information, there's certain pieces that can put the whole puzzle together for you that would otherwise be non-cohesive or very difficult to actually understand what's actually going on. And I know I've been getting tons of emails from just various types of people, and I know personally that the resistance is full of the universe. It's full of individuals from various places, and I see an obligation personally to make sure that everyone understands what they are and what they can be. And in that, it's made me universal. I first wanted to start today's show by defining the word universe. Everyone's familiar, the word uni means one or together, and the word verse means actually against. It means a challenge. And it's important to realize that because the actual situation that we're dealing with is everyone is together sharing a collective reality, but there's many conflicts that are going on in that reality. In addition, I wanted some clarity to come from where we originated, which is what we're going to be talking about today in this show, where each person originated from and what they are at this point so that they can know what they're supposed to become. And that starts with the very interesting story. I always say that if the story can be truly interesting, then it would involve you and it would involve me because that would draw our attention. And so today I really want people to understand that this story is about you. And this is a story that's known by some of the highest levels of some of the people that are involved in the highest level of information. And to understand again, if it's a secret society, it means it's still a secret. All the other societies that, like Masonry and Illuminati, those aren't secret societies. They're not secret. So the fact is that there are many societies that no one knows the names, no one knows the terms, their colleges are invisible, and they're continuing to give instruction to their seeds. And I wanted to explain the actual status of a soul because a soul is very similar to a seed. A seed belongs to a certain plant, but it now has this opportunity to become a plant. It's not the plant yet, it just has the opportunity to become that. And so that's why solo is very congruent with alone or by yourself, because you're still a spore or a piece of the whole, but you have the opportunity to develop the whole thing. So within everyone, there's an opportunity for them to not only develop their own world, but also to create a 13th planet or a 12th planet or whatever number of planets they're saying in the constellation, one more, which is one that you create. And it has all of what you've pulled from each of these planets as a lesson. And I began to understand this when I was looking very carefully at the names of the week that we have and how certain planets were chose to be those names of the week. And if a situation began to occur where a new planet was known, then the only thing that planets like Earth would do is just add another day to their cycle, because that planet would move into our system. It would change the elliptical orbits and timings and machinations and things of that nature. And then the people would have no choice but to add another day into their calendar or into their week, because there would be a new body that would appear in their sky, a new sun, for better lack of words. And so this is very important to start to realize, because what we've seen in the past is before that actually happens, like when a new planet is coming into the universe to teach its lessons, etc., or for the universe to teach it lessons, it has to make room. And sometimes that planet collides or comes into conflict with other planets and other ideas of thought and ways of being and cultures and groups of people and nations. But we all have to share this galaxy, and we all have to share this space that we've been given. And there's plenty of space, but that's not the situation. The situation is not whether we have enough space to house the life here. How much space we have can be seen in the stars, and how much just dark matter is out there. It's a matter of how much space do you have to put in between these stars so they don't come into conflict. It's like he can't be around her, or they can't be around each other, because the moment that they're around each other, there's an igniting that happens. So many people who chose the scientific path have only looked at this from only the planetary standpoint of when a meteor may collide and things like of that nature, but they look at none of the essences, which is what people that were deep into the spiritual or spirituality already understood about, which was that each of these planets are giving off an essence that is more or less a seed of germination. And when you collide with one, or when one of them hits you with their rays, at that point, a seed, even if it's just a thought and an idea, begins to grow within you. And according to that planet, wherever that seed came from, its particular cycle, it will tell you exactly how long it's going to take for that idea or for that seed to germinate and grow within you and without you. So I noticed something very interesting also about the time and the dimensions as I'm going deeper into just this deeper thought or quantum thought. If you are something of an insect, or let's say a fly or something that's buzzing, the amount of heartbeats per second versus the size versus the size of the planet, the gravitational pull, all alters time. So what may be 4 days for you, meaning that we see that a fly or insect generally has a 4-day, 5-day lifespan, some of them longer, is a long period of time, maybe 400 or 500 years for that particular being, because of how fast its heart is moving, the actual frequency it's on, which you can hear through its buzz and sound, etc. And so what I find here is that these laws of nature were more finite and more exact to actually go by than all of the laws that man and woman were producing when they were in their stage of forgetfulness, or the yuga they call it a yuga of darkness. But we now want to know, well, what caused that darkness? What causes a massive memory loss within the complete amount of sentient species, at least that we have contact with, meaning what actually could erase everyone's mind at one point and have everyone starting over? And so now I've come with the answers to those questions, not just based on one-line answers, but multiple examples of how it redundifies in our actual field, our field that we're living in. And so what's most important now to understand is that many people are confusing also what other planets are doing for what other planets are doing. So what Saturn is doing is being confused as what Jupiter's doing, and what Mars is doing is being confused for what Venus is doing. And this is all coming about because people don't understand the information that I'm revealing to you today. What goes on between these planets is that there's a term with the masculine planets that's just called L. So L has nothing to do with whether it's Jupiter or whether it's Saturn or whether it's a certain planet, even though Jupiter and Saturn both go by the name L. And if you notice within those names, Jupiter and Saturn, neither one of those planets have the name L in them. And it's because L is a term that's just given to a sun. And so when it says the Elohim, it's still not being descriptive enough because it's saying the suns got together. We still have to figure out which suns were doing it. So it's important to understand this because that's where we're going to begin today, is we're going to begin in starting to point out what one planet is responsible for and what another planet is responsible for. And this will actually help you in your chakra centers also to allow those chakra centers to warm up so that they can become malleable, so that you can actually mold them into the stones, into what you need them to be. We already discovered that the chakra center is a positive and a negative. It moves in both directions. So what is the positive part of having a chakra center? Well, if they're activated and they're balanced and they're open, you will become a super being. If they are blocked and closed and you're sealed by them, you become under the control of something else, or you're not accessible to a certain visual spectrum. So what's literally happening is that we have to learn how to not only bring the fire back into our bodies, and this is the passion and the activation and want to go and do something, but we also have to have the knowledge of what exactly we need to shape our power into being. What use does it really have? What are you doing with it? And this is going to determine how your seeds grow, because every day you're planting seeds. And you're responsible, just like when a man enters a woman, if he does not take care of himself properly, then it will reflect on the child. The child will be weaker. And so the idea here is for you reap what you sow. So it's very important to watch what you're putting out, because you got to eat from that. So this becomes no one else's responsibility but your own. And it's very imperative that you understand these lessons now, because the only reason why these lessons are coming across is because we're about to hit another point where a collision is going to happen. And I want to explain about these collisions in regards to transmutation first. Everyone should understand at this point that a person does not just remain a human for all of their existence. There's a certain amount of time and allotment for them to enjoy a particular cycle or learn from the cycle or fear the cycle. Whatever happens, you're still going through the cycle. So with Earth in particular, it's given us the opportunity to become humans and to be humans. In that, we learn all the lessons that we can, and then we transmute into something next. And so that gets us into the title of the show. Where do we go when you die? Well, this one becomes very simple when you sit down and think about it. If a person's been coerced or conned or enticed or whatever to begin to live a certain culture, it will not be long before that person gets transferred to where that culture actually truly resides. Meaning, if you are practicing Martian culture, after this life, you will be going to Mars. If you are practicing Venusian culture, you'll be going to Venus. If you practice all cultures in balance, then you have a passport to the universe. So it's about, again, cycling your energy through these chakras or planets and not getting stuck. So I found out basically that Venus is left to us, which is the left-hand path, and Mars is right to us, which is the right-hand path. Mars is known in the ancient texts as the wolf star, which is probably where the story of the werewolf comes from, because its defeat and triumph over Venus at one point, which is where the story of the vampire comes from, in an eclipse. Now, it's interesting that we will bring up, because these are really two adverse type beings and definitely mutants, if a person imagines that vampires and werewolves actually exist, which we found out to be true. But we also have discovered now that when the germination from other planets hit our surface, it actually creates a mutation. And this is what's been going on for a prolonged period of time. There's a germination or a germ from another planet. And that's always been the fear of this planet, is being exposed to viruses, such as the Andromeda Strain movie points out, that are abundant in the space, and our planet being affected by them. And that's why we have layers to our planet. There's all these different atmospheres to keep different things out and to filter different things out, so that finally when you get to the surface, the creatures that live on the surface, such as the humans, the animals, are extremely protected by all these atmospheres until they get to a level of being able to deal with what's outside there. Now, when you have to keep someone under protection, then it does become the prison. It becomes somewhat of a prison, especially when you're also in there with other bad cellmates, other cells that are not really habitable for the body or the group of that we're all in. So what happens is that someone has to come through, or something has to come through to start to immunize. It has to start to purify. It has to start to shape up cells. And it does that by teaching other cells hey, this is what it could be like. This is what shape you could be in if you start doing this. So the first thing that I want to bring forward is that the idea that we've gained of eating meat in this world will be the beginning trial for many if they're expecting to get to the higher realms. Because if you notice that, we'll take the fly again, they say it's the most humble creature. I have a book that everyone should read, The Fly Being the Most Humble Creature, because everyone doesn't like the flies. That when it walks across the surface of something, there are so many microscopic organisms that it picks up and then it licks its hands, and that's what it eats. So you can only imagine how many microscopic organisms are within an animal that you may consume and how many different levels that may affect you on. It will affect you so deeply that one will not know what it was like. The moment that they taste the blood and eat the blood, they will not know what it was like to think without it until they've been without it for a long time. So a lot of the culture that we're inheriting is actually being passed down to us from our parents, from our planets. And it's important for us to still realize that we have the gauge. Just like when you become older, you don't have to do what your parents tell you to do anymore, especially if it's not correct. In fact, you even get an opportunity to go and instruct them. And if you do that properly, cell by example, comparing itself to another cell, it'll say, you know what, I want to become like her because that's what I wanted to be. In fact, when I was actually putting that seed out, that's all I was really thinking about, is that I wanted to make another one of me, a wonderful version. But this one has now taught me what that idea really was. And so when you say die means to split in two. What's literally happening is the parent is ejecting the child and sending it somewhere so that it begins its process. And that's where we're actually at. This is the beauty of the universe, is that it's going to keep doing this. So whether you can hang on or not, whether you can get into this or not, whether it makes sense to you or not, all of that makes no difference. You're given the same opportunity as every single seed per se, but it's still based on what you can use to germinate your soil and what you're using to germinate your soil. So what we had just recently, because the Saturnalian Jupiterian conflict had took place a while ago, and I can definitely show, as we have an hour and 30 minutes in the show, I can definitely show later on how that's playing still out now. But the recent conflict has been between Venus and Mars, and it's very interesting because there's that book from a long time ago that say women are from Venus, men are from Mars. But the actual fact of things is more closer to that than anything. But to understand also that a male does have a womb. And this is, again, one of those deeply hidden secrets, that the male carries the womb in his solar plexus. A woman actually has two wombs. So the fact that we come to find is that even planets like Mars, even though being personified as masculine, can still give birth to a homunculus or a son, and only sons. And so this starts to become let us see a lot more broader about, okay, this is why we're here and this is what we're supposed to be doing, because we have to bridge the universe, because our people are waiting on us to come back. And I started to understand very deeply about these spiritual teachings that we've now profaned, because of how the ones that have taught those teachings to us now are profaning them. But their original meaning, because they have thousands of meanings, there could be one thing that happens. If you say a mother is weeping for her son, just because that's said in the Bible doesn't mean it's true or not true. And from multiple levels, a mother can weep for her sons. So what needs to happen is an innovative retranslation of the ancient mysteries and teachings that have always been finite laws of nature. And then one can introduce that into society, and that will begin to rehabilitate society. I will say now also that, especially under the new instruction of the universe, I'm very new. So I'm doing my best to translate what's being given to me as clear as possible to everyone so that they understand it. Also, I just wanted to let everyone know that it's not about whether It's not about whether or not anything of this planet is going on. It's really about what you're going to do about it. It's meaning like you could hear a great story, but if you still get off the phone and you don't somehow feel like that story is about you, then somehow I failed. And in order for me to fulfill my obligation, it's important for me to succeed. And so if there is something that you need, I'm always available. Like people that have emailed me, and it's been going on for 2.5 years, like I've always responded. So I just want to let everyone know that whatever you need help with this, I can show it to you very clearly. But it's not in your best interest, or my best interest for that matter, for you to leave. Because I've noticed at times people have to be removed and some people leave the resistance. But this means to me sometimes sadness because I understand the level of truth in which I bring. But it also brings a sadness because that's still a sign of how much this world is ready for the truth. And so we all have to help each other out, like Gary was saying, that if we all contribute something, if you just post a link somewhere, show somebody else show it to someone else, if you copy one of the books from Scribe and give it to someone, if you contribute, you will actually see the results of this begin to manifest in your reality. But you will have to earn it. And this is the most important thing that I wanted to get people to understand that are still on that partial side of just being good and thinking all positive and imagining that that's going to happen and just kind of sitting back in bliss, because the resistance is still immune to bliss. The fact of the matter is that you could sit in bliss for how long? If someone is promising you this reality in which you would not have to do nothing, and I'll explain to you why in a little bit, that's how man started in the garden. He didn't have anything to do, and so then he had ideas because it was perfect then. And from that point, man, woman have been trying to get back to their perfect garden. Look at the words that are being used. Not to even skip topics here, but it is a part of the topic. The garden is your planet, your planetary soil. Once you're in that, you don't feel like there's anything else for you and that you need, because there's not. You are fully sustained. But in that, if you decide to go outside of the garden and pursue other things, it's similar to the effects of drugs. The first high, most people are trying to return back to that first high. It's the same thing. When a person's on the planetary sphere in their soil, completely harmonized, completely balanced, anything less than that, they're going to be attempting to return to. So, in addition, we do have spirits here, so spirits are a little bit more adept and always return back to the life-seeking spirituality, because the thing about spirits is the moment that you start getting involved with spirit energy, spirit knowledge, etc., there becomes a craving for that, for better lack of words, life after life, where you have to have some type of spiritual contact. And this is what's playing out for many of us right now, is that I just like to read the magical book. I just like to look into the stars. I just like to, and this comes from, as a spirit, past lives of doing the spiritual. So, I have actually a guy here, and I'm going to go ahead and take a look at it. I wrote some notes for this show. Also, to anyone, the notes, like the last week's show, are actually up on last week's post now. And this one also, there's tons of notes here that are not cohesive, but if you understand like I do, you'll definitely make things that are here cohesive. But this becomes more or less my guideline to go through without the show, so I make sure that I talk about everything that I need to talk about. And so I guess what we'll do from here is I'll just take a sip of water real quick. And we'll get into Saturn. What really happened is that basically for the last week and a half, several transmissions have been coming across from the planet Saturn. Even from in my mailbox, people asking me, well, you know, I'm looking at this Illuminati stuff, I'm looking at this mainstream stuff, and it seems to all equal one thing to me, Saturn. What do you know about this? And many people have also been asking about this same topic, so it's time for me to clarify what goes on Saturn from a universal standpoint. Basically, Saturn is known as the old king, because if you, in the beginning of the Bible, the first being that really starts to do anything is Saturn, as far as is shaping things up and domesticating and bending the waters and things like that. And again, Scientists look at this as just Saturn moving closer into our field, being at a different age, and then its compositions, which is mostly methane gas, starting to affect the planetary spheres that are around it and putting its influence on it and putting its seed into it. So Saturn was actually seeded, because Saturn is also known as cedar, and cedar is the tree that Saturn is worshipped under. Saturn actually seeded the earth, and it went into the sea. The power of Saturn and his brother and his son Jupiter is electric. And this is where the word eel and el comes from, because the eel is an electric snake. It's also known as like a worm, because if you looked at this on a germinated level, it would be more or less a worm germination. Remember, all germinations are seeds. Some germinations are worms. And these worms went into the earth. And many of the individuals under the old belief systems are under the system of Saturn. Saturn was Osiris. Saturn was Tammuz. Saturn was Brahma. And then, of course, if you go to India, you see everything is Sat, Satsang, Sat Yoga, etc., because they're still under the knowledge of the old king. And let me explain to you their complete conclusion of Saturn, which is still a lot different than the Western world. The Western world is actually worshiping what they call the unrepented Saturn. This is the Klipos of linear time. To understand the grander beings have already escaped time. So what happens is that if you're stuck in time for one of their lessons, you will be dealing with them when they were in that particular level of time. And because we're on a dual plane, we're actually dealing with the gods when they were still in duality. When we get to the next plane, we will deal with them when they gain triplicity, which is a judge in between both of them, and so on and so forth. So when you're on the dual plane, the gods have two heads like Janus. So Saturn, in this case, indeed plays on his other side Jupiter, which is his son. Just like we talked about, they died. Necromancy is to bring up dead spirits. So when a spirit dies, it splits in two, and then next thing you know, the father is holding the son. The mother is holding the daughter. And we could see this in a lot of the mythology where it shows that the father, and like in the Isis mythos, that her husband is also her son. She somehow brought him back to life. This is a simple procedure that they're really explaining to you, and it's only because of the cloudiness of the spiritual world right now that it's very difficult for many individuals to get the correct transmission that they need so that they can get their memories back, or forward, as I'd like to say. So this memory erasing, because everyone is familiar with the style of the code of the matrix, so they're also familiar with the way I talk. I have to jump around into several things in order to cover the whole thing. And we eventually get to everything. So if you're like, okay, well, wow, he left off there, then just hold on. I'll be forward to it in just a moment. This electromagnetic energy, if you notice that there's individuals that are calling themselves, I think the new one is now J Electronica. And if you understand the electric and the J, then you understand that the J is also Y. It's a fork. It's like you holding a tuning fork in your hand. And what's coming off the tip of it is some type of frequency or electric something, essence. And through Jupiter's and Saturn's electromagnetic, or in this case, electric force, they influence things. And so what was known to happen after the conflict, the collision between Jupiter and Saturn, in which Jupiter arose as victor, it also had to take place on Earth, which means that what's done in the heavens, if two planets get into a conflict and collide, that doesn't still mean that on the Earth that there's going to be a conflict, but it doesn't mean that the whole thing is played out yet, because Earth is in time. It's in the distance from when these things are taking place. So what literally happened on Earth is that once Saturn conflicted with Jupiter, and then Jupiter overthrew Saturn, there was still the Nephilim, who were the sons of Saturn, the ones that you see in the deeper books, the real big ones, the ones that had all this knowledge. They were shining, they had wings, etc. These beings were still here, and they got the memo, but they didn't want to accept what had exactly took place, that their father had been overthrown by their brother, one of their brothers. And so what they did was they began to form a strategy, and this is known in the Bible as building the Tower of Babel. They began to build communication networks, spaceports, etc., in order to communicate with other things to start to rally a group or to re-legion so that they could go to war with Jupiter and possibly either bring back their father Saturn. But it was found out because it's still a universe. A lot of these other brothers were already in conflict. They were waiting on each other at times to overthrow something so that they could overthrow the whole thing. So basically it's all a mess. It's chaos. You understand now, the beginning was chaos. Now there's way more order here than what was going on in the beginning. So what happened with these brothers is that they started to devise a plan in order to approach Jupiter about the situation. And Jupiter is known in the Vedas as Brihaspati. In the English, it's Yahweh, it's Jehovah, it's etc. It's the reigning God. It's Jesus, etc. The reigning God. So what happens is now even that term reigning is what these gods are involved in, because they're involved in dropping seeds, dropping essences. Even Mars dropped red composites or seeds into the Red Sea. For those who are wondering, why is that called the Red Sea? Why is it right there by, the pyramids and things are not too far away? What's the connection between Mars and the planet? It's all the seed thing. So what happened actually is that once the Nephilim began to erect things to a certain point, they say Jupiter in his lofty presence, in his lofty realm, was actually monitoring this and decided, okay, that's it. I'm going to erase all memories with electromagnetics because I'm an electromagnetic god. I'm a thunderer. Okay? Now, the interesting part is that if you take someone right now into electrotherapy clinic, we can actually erase their memory. Because the mind being zapped by electromagnetic fields for a prolonged period, or any period, because the body is still magnetic, it messes everything up. It makes everything go haywire. So, for those who are wondering, well, what's up with the Borg and all of that, it's already happened. It wasn't like wires and stuff. It's tubes. It's ventricles. It's an organic situation, but the idea of Borg is very present. And so what we need to understand is that basically everyone got their memory wiped because the reigning planet decided it was better for everyone to just forget for a while all of what happened. And maybe in that forgetting, they could forget some. Now, of course, our level of amnesia is a lot more deeper than what we're calling an adept, an individual who's been fully regressed. They know exactly what's happening. They're activating on the dimension. Their planet is calling to them, and it's inciting them to do certain things. It's inciting them to be zealous for their home planet. And what in many cases happens, especially if you on your home planet, your lineage from your home planet is at a certain bar, then they're weeping for you, meaning they're actually asking constantly and sending up prayers like, when is Michael going to come home? When is Dante coming home? When is Keisha coming home? When is Sarah coming home? When is Jennifer coming home? And when are they going to bring us the spoils of everything they've learned? Like they say, hopefully I live to tell you the tale. This is about later on when you get to where your people are, you will be able to bring them everything from this land that you were enslaved in and you had to learn all these lessons in, but eventually you left Egypt with the spoils. This is what is actually supposed to take place and is going to take place for many individuals, especially if you can catch on to the type of information that's coming across and who is exactly delivering that information to you. It's none other than father, mother. We're all connected, but it's about what are you connected to, how much information from what you're connected to you really have, and how well can you translate that to other people so that they can also wake up and begin to grow properly before the sight comes. Because Saturn was always known as the sight because he heralded the flood. Like Saturnalian culture only comes at the end of a cycle when it's time to harvest. Like, oh, whoa, it's time to get these people out of here. It's Saturn time again. It's lust, debauchery, impurity, killing, murder, rape, injustice. It's Saturn again. And he marks that time. So it doesn't matter whether or not people realize that that is going on. There are a very large group of powerful beings that have been doing this for a prolonged period of time. And you just have an opportunity to figure out what's going on and how it applies to you. But whether you do that or not is going to make no difference to me. It's going to make no difference to the higher beings. You will simply be, if you don't grow up, another seed that didn't produce anything. A barren fruit a barren tree that has to end up getting chopped down at some point. So we find that what's happening to us now is that all this information is being given to us so that we can get to this next level. And many of us are actually prepared to receive this information now. And so that's where the resistance is really going is that resistance is not going to hold back on the level of information that it's receiving because a person's past inclinations about what's really going on. They'll catch up with us later. And it's important to understand that we were talking about things 2 or 3 years ago that individuals are just now starting to accept. But that was still 2 or 3 years ago. They cannot expect for us to still be talking about and doing the same thing. So here we are 3 years later, and once again, we're way above the bar, and we're giving that information to everyone. So this concept of eating meat, to understand, just like if you see a person, they're eating wings. They love to eat wings. What is the whole concept of eating wings? Shouldn't you be growing wings? So if people are made to eat the wings off something, they're going to be eating the wings off themselves. That's the actual reward, or what we call the residual effect of when you remove something's life. It has you owe it, basically. It can follow you. It can insert its influence into a certain degree, and that's why if a person has killed someone, they can map that spirit is still following them. Some people say, well, it's looking for deliverance. It's looking for truth, because all spirits are looking for deliverance. All souls are looking for deliverance. But it has now gained a universal depth because you've taken it. And so that's important to realize that Nimrod was the first king and also the first one to eat meat. The first king by that, using that term. So in eating this meat, what actually happened was he became like the Grigori, which is what it says in the ancient Bible. It says that Nimrod was basically like a man for a while, and then something happened, and then he became like them. And it says like who? And it says the Grigori. But the Bible is so sparse that it's not even giving us any information about this before it's run on to something else. But the fact is that who the Grigori actually were, which is very close to the gargoyle, which we termed which we put together in the Cult of the Matrix, Gar, which means hook, was literally the transmutation that happened when man began to actually consume what was then his friends. That he took the form of, as you see, the main picture of Nimrod is him, and then I have one that comes right out of Samaria, and they even have the inner workings of the cow or the bull. It shows you that he somehow grafted himself into that. And it's very also important to understand that the power of these men and the power of these beings then was totally different than the power that we're seeing now. You can activate that power once more because it's still within you. But the fact of the matter is what the bull was in the beginning, which was at least 200 to 300 times the size of the one we're looking at now, because of the level of gravity that was here on this planet. And of course there was not as many because they weren't domesticated. They weren't, it was like a family. If you overthrew one of them and killed it, then the blood that would be on your hands, and if you ate it, then you would actually inherit all the traits of this particular animal. Now, if you notice in indigenous culture, they still believe the same thing, that if you eat the heart or the parts of another animal, then you gain that trait. And so even in the scripture, it tries to reduplicate that through the communion. If you eat the parts of Jesus and drink the blood, etc., then you become Jesus. So what literally is happening is, and what happened was, just what you see in Egypt, which on the wall you got man body but animal head. And many thought, especially amongst the fallen ones, that this was going to somehow elate them to the level of the highest gods or the highest beings then. Because they were like, if I gain all the animal essence, like you see in China, they eat like any type of animal, parrots, things of that nature, and it's a fad to them because they think that they're going to gain that animal's power. But the whole idea was like a zombie or like a mutant. You're eating your friends. You're eating what is abhorred, your own blood. And so something's wrong with you to do that. So again, for those that are acting like this planet and the people that exist here will be going to another level, it will not be until they earn it. And when they earn it, you will go. When you earn it, you will go immediately. And if you're looking for a place that's like this paradise kingdom that you're thinking about, I can take you to it. It's right here. It's, oh, you're talking about heaven on earth now? Heaven on earth? Yes, the kingdom's in you. When you start to tune up your stuff, you have your biochemical thoughts, you have everything necessary for you to do that, then you get the power to actually let go of your influence and possessions that are around you. It doesn't even have to be material things. Many times as people, we're definitely facing a challenge with those that are around us that are in the zombie CDC mode that are actually taking our energy. And then we're wondering, well, what can I do about them? But that's like my best friend. All of those inclinations that are in the mind, all of those emotions are imbalanced because it's not allowing you to think clearly. Thinking clearly be like, okay, this is vampiric. I've already sent the warning. Let me go ahead and relocate. Again, Costa Rica, $200, $300 a month, $400 a month. You're not going to be willing out, but you'll be staying at the beach. You can eat mangoes off the tree. You can swim in the ocean every day. You can snorkel. You can see the puffer fish and all those nice fish. You can lay out there in the sun. You see, so that's paradise. Of course, that's as much as Earth really has to offer from that level. But to understand also, I'm here in Costa Rica, and I can definitely be doing that. But where am I at? I'm here. I'm studying and things because there's only so much of that you can really do anyway before you're like, well, let me go and do something. Is there anything this universe has to offer besides me just sitting down, chilling out? Can I take an adventure? So I'll tell you that the Akashic records are full of adventures. They're full of adventures of individuals that have taken what's available to them and begin to utilize it. The fastest way to gain power is to blame yourself for everything. It's not the Illuminati. You're going to give the Illuminati power. It's not Mars. You're going to give Mars power. It's not any of these planets. It's you, because you're the planet. And how you're acting is governing, especially right now, what you're doing is governing everything about your environment that you're around. You're waking up to that. It's always been going on, but you're waking up to that. And you're waking up also to the information that allows you to see exactly what's been happening here so you can get out of Wonderland. Alice or all ice. These are words that actually connect to certain things that they're saying. Oh, okay, this is exactly the individuals that we need to cater this to. And that's what planets have been doing. Planets have been sending their instructions to their people. Like this whole Martian level of control, which is Rome, which is the church, is all through the authority of Mars. The Martian symbol of worship is the sword. They bring it to everyone else as a symbol of a cross. You turn the cross upside down, put your hand on the hilt, it's a sword. Swords were not created with points on the tips in the beginning. They were created with just the flat end. And so this is the connection that's always been happening here. And like I said, there's many societies that are out there that are at different levels of power, because you got to realize that the most powerful thing still is an unhindered seed, a child. And many of the children of this world are discarded by their parents. That's a good thing and a bad thing at times. Meaning it has a positive and a negative effect. When a child, just as we are, we're in this world, we've been discarded kind of by our parents. We still have a system somewhat that's helping us, but we're still kind of out here on our own, for better lack of words. It's the same thing that happens on the physical realm when an actual mother decides to leave the child. Then the child is left to fend for themselves. But generally, the University of the world will pick up certain children that are already known to have certain abilities and actually will put the inclination in their mother's mind to leave that child. You don't want that child. And they'll leave the child, the University of the World, to come pick it up and begin to teach it through this planet. Teach it the lessons early. So that's why you see, like, the kids that have been in the streets and things, they're like adults at the age 12 and 13. They didn't have no choice. They learned all the lessons of just being a child very fast, and now they're at the next phase. And so some people are still running around like, this is all got to stop. And they've been running around saying that for like the last 20 or 30 years. It's not about stopping it. It's about guiding it into the right direction. It's about figuring out why it's happening. Some people say, this is not supposed to be going on. Look, if it's not supposed to be going on, then it's not going to be going on. That's the end of it. This is the part of the mind that has to start to come back into play. Like I said, if it's a secret society, then no one knows about it. So the words have to still remain, they have to keep their strength without being blurred together. Meaning that you cannot, like you say, bad has two terms. It means bad, like a bad is a really bad person, and then there's bad means sometimes that's good. Like, man, that's bad. I like those shoes. And then, but bad still means a bad, and he's the Lord of the bottomless pit. So there's still only one meaning for that. But if you've given it the word two meanings, or even three meanings, which English does a really good job of doing, then you could see how that's how we were confused. And so what they're saying is that there are certain beings, including Mercury, or Thoth, Hermes, Buddha, that may have been responsible for, at some sense, confusing mankind even more. And they say that's from the planetary influence of Mercury, bringing its knowledge, bringing its information into these people who were just got confused. But over time, they would gain their knowledge back again if they just had that information. So we go right again to the Tower of Babel, or man building and erecting his communication grid. Same thing man's doing now. It's still the Nephilim, still the fallen ones, because basically a lot of the people here, a large percentage, are children of those same fallen ones. They're building the tower again. They're provoking whoever the Most High or the God is supposed to be. And they're already predicting that it's going to electromagnetically wipe out all of their computers. They already say, well, that there's something that's supposed to happen from the sun that's going to wipe out all the computers. We don't know how it's going to happen, but that should be a great day for us because there'll be no computers, and that's the New Agers. And then the old schoolers are like, what do you mean no computers? We're going to have to let our technology go? All of our bearing, everything is going to be lost. And then those that are in wholeness are like, if they just wipe out the computers with electromagnetic blast, will that affect the magnetic wave and energy balance of the aura? Then we find evidence that that's actually happened. So are we on the prelude of another memory wipe? Or can we count on everyone having their memory so they can keep doing this stupidity that everyone is up to now, which is birds pecking off each other's wings and pecking off each other's feathers and picking with each other and fighting with each other and quarreling with each other all the time. And then you have all these individuals that are supposed to be so high on their knowledge and know all this stuff, but yet they haven't graced me with this information yet that the universe, what the roles of the universe and the planets really were, and when they come into collision and all the other different kind of beings that live here and what their actual roles are, and that when we eat them, that they actually become a part of us and they start to share us, and that we have a soul that's by itself, but then we can actually talk to spirits, and then they come and latch on to us like we're Voltron or something. Some of them give us more power. Some of them drag us down. That there's two-faced gods, and that on one side you may have a really beautiful, splendid guy, and then on the other side you have some vampiric demon woman. Whatever the calibration that they want to make it, it's almost like, you know what? There's every story here, but which one are you really learning from? And how can you amplify what you have coming when you're put in the right direction? And so this is where we're really at. We find that the knowledge here on this planet has now been exhausted, meaning that the actual information and data that's been written down about this planet between Jacob Lorber and Velikovsky's work, there's really nothing more that needs to be said. The next thing needs to be action, because it's obvious after reading that you kind of sigh. And then you're like, I guess the real duty here is for us to get to work and get to connecting with these people Like I get a lot of emails from people that have been involved in cultures in the past, and they're ready to break free of it. They realize that it's gotten their parents, it's gotten their grandma, it's gotten their great-grandma, or at least it's gotten enough friends for them to see that I don't have to loop the loop. I don't have to learn from my mistakes. I can actually learn from someone else's. So what do? How do I not be like the Grigori or the stone statues, like you see the lady who wrote the Harry Potter books carrying around, the ones that she got from John Dee, these stone statues that are so dense now that's what a stone is. It's, as you read in Jacob Lorber's book, it's the essence and the energy been compressed and burnt to ash and stratus of different types of essences and ideas of beings themselves. But because their ideas and their way of being is so dense, it's important for them to be stones. And then the idea is, where can you extract the essence from a crystal? Can you actually regrow and reseed the idea and the pure essence of what it really is? Or are we still running around here playing like everything is just Harry Potter, confusing the hell out of everyone and acting like magic has anything to do with the grimoires from Saturn, and bringing up things from the opposite fields of these planetary systems while not looking at all at what's on the other side? So here's another thing I just want to interject here. If something is from another planet, it's given its name, especially as far as color. How this really works on the spectrum is that if a planet has a certain ray, a certain color, so when it adds its color, like green is all from one planet, red is all from one planet, blue is all from one planet. And then when all those planets combine, they form Captain Planet. No, I'm joking. Serious. They come together and they bring all of their spectrums onto a planet, and that's why you see everything in color, because all those colors have brought their influence, and then when you look at the color, it does tie into that planet. And so I brought this up for a major reason in regards to our connection here. But before I get into that, I'm just going to take a look, because it's an hour and 3 minutes into the show. I'm going to take a look at the chat box really quick, and I'm going to take a look at a couple areas to make sure that I've gotten cohesive with questions. Because if I don't do that now, then I don't see myself doing it, because there's still quite a few things on this list that I wanted to convey. And I'm also going to take just a moment to look at this list. Oh, here's one. Okay, the word hell. Like, if you notice, the word hell doesn't really describe just a place of fire. It actually means something raining down from the sky. And so what was known is that Jupiter, when coming in contact with the planet with this particular kind of electromagnetic force that was wiping memories, that it caused another kind of reaction within our atmosphere. Again, I'm in study with a lot of the stuff now in meditation, but it's important for me to just translate what I have learned. What Jupiter basically did is because it began to rain basically gold, the electromagnetic of Jupiter in contact with our atmosphere infused the cores of our Earth with gold. And thus Jupiter became associated with gold. Now, if people still want to think that this just has something to do with just planetary bodies that are not alive, if you notice, the Jews have been responsible for continuously upholding Jupiter. Now, still understand, the Jews worship Saturn and Jupiter. They don't just worship one. That's what it's called to be in pantheism. There's not just one God. You understand all of the stars, and you understand their balances and weights and things of that nature. So that's what they're into. But they've been keeping themselves responsible for keeping Jupiter alive through the gem. The gem is all of the seeds that have come from Jupiter. If you notice, Jupiter is a very large planet, so many people have been seeded from Jupiter. And these gems, and some of the most valuable ones, are kept in certain places in order for the people who correspond to those jewels, like I was revealing on Facebook, for the people that correspond to those jewels to keep them into some level of control. So we also find this connection between Jupiter, the gems, and gold within everything that you do with jewelry, which just means jewel means Jew in L. And this is by far anti-Semitism. If anything, this is pro-Jewish. because they finally get the chance to realize what their insatiable lust for these diamonds and this gold is really about. Now, also realize this. This means that it doesn't matter if gold, even though gold is the highest conductor of electricity, it doesn't matter if gold had no value. If Jupiter came into the field and all of a sudden became the ruling planet, then that means anyone who knew that Jupiter was a ruling planet already knew that at some point, those who are Jupiterian were going to make gold the most valuable thing. So, what have our Jewish friends been doing since the beginning? Collecting gold. Now what's worth more than it was ever worth before? Gold. But because it's about to hit its peak itself, does that mean that Jupiter is actually at its peak and there's going to be a new planet that goes and moves in as our next sun? Definitely. Have the Mayans actually pointed this out already? Yes. It happens all the time. Every time a planet is allowed or a sun is allowed to rule for a certain point, and then its position is changed in the stars. At a certain point, like we're looking at our sun now, we took pictures of it, it's shaped like a Merkaba. We're still trying to figure out exactly what is our sun and who is it. And people say it's Rob or Rod, R-O-D. Some say it's Ra, R-A. We just know it as R. If you look in a lot of the texts of the ancient books and the sigils and things, you see the symbol of the R actually being one of the main symbols that's written, or the owner mark that's written in many different places. So all these connections are here, and my duty, not only to myself but to everyone else that chooses to listen, is to continuously make it cohesive. I know we've skipped around into a lot of different things today. We've talked about a lot of stuff. And my main tune is going to be from now is, instead of causing conflict all the time by arguing with people about what their gods are doing, we're just going to point it out because it's actually what they're doing. And that they're connected and been seeded from this, as they say on the Great Judgment Day, then all 12 of the suns will appear in the sky along with their companions. And the sky will be so bright that it will melt off everything that doesn't really originate with that individual from what they have chosen to where they should be. And then those planets will gather their harvest and then go and send them to wherever, or disperse them to wherever they need to go, or wherever that planet has set for them next. And so that's why there was always worship of several different planets in the past, because there was always an argument of who could produce the next best afterlife experience for you. This is nothing more than dependence. We've now learned that we can actually get to a level where we start to take care of seeds and souls. But all of that starts here. Like if you notice, Earth has earned the responsibility to take care of all of us. And it's doing the best that it really can. So when will we start earning the responsibility to do the same thing, looking at the universe as not what it can do for us, but what we can do for the universe? By first starting to take care of the plants and the seeds that are around you that are wilting because of the heat, like I talked about, the hate. It's important to understand both of these integers, because you're going to have to explain it to them. A person is, when they're polarized in one thing, the only thing they understand is that thing, because that's how they're blind in their other eye. So you have to talk them out of it. It's like a negotiator talking someone down off the building, like, okay, let me explain to you what's really happening here. And so here we are again at an hour and 10 minutes. I'm going to start taking some questions for a moment, and I do see that there is actually one, what they call a hand up here. If you press 1 and you want to talk, I can actually answer your questions. We're going to start off with the 678, which is Atlanta, and we're going to go ahead and open that line. So caller, your last 4 digits are 3400. You're on line with the Resistance. How can I help you?
Well, I didn't actually know that I had my hand up.
Okay, that's not a problem. That's not a problem at all. So if you don't have a question, ma'am, I will take the next caller unless you do have a question.
I don't have one presently. I just kind of tapped in.
Okay, if you do have a question, I will come back to you.
All right, thanks.
Okay. All right, we have a caller from the 916 area code, last four digits 1369. I'm now opening up the line. Caller, you are on the air.
Shalom, shalom. This is Hyle, Sacramento calling.
How you doing, Hyle?
Oh, everything's wonderful. How's the day treating you?
Oh man, it's doing me really wonderful too. I'm glad I got up really early so I can, start translating some of this information to everyone.
Okay, I'm glad I caught the beginning of the show and I've been on since. I have one question. I called in before on one of the other shows and I mentioned about one of my visions about the light through the tree. And I believe it was you that said that you would do some research on it because you had heard or just heard something familiar, similar to that out in Atlanta. Do you recall that? Saying that?
Yes, I do. I do recall that.
Oh, cool. So I did my research, I came to, a certain point with it, but I just wanted to see if you had anything, that you discovered about it, because it's real important. I see itself, it's playing itself out over and over at not a loop, but something, a learning process. And maybe, missing something, a perspective or someone else's side, or
For sure. Well, basically, especially in light of more or less the topic of today's show being about seeds and being about plants, etc., then it's very easy for us to clearly divine that the trees have not only a symbolic role, but also a very deep connection to each planet. And that's why every tree has its corresponding planet. Like the bo tree is related to Mercury, the cedar being related to Saturn. Different trees, of course, in mythology, it's easy to kind of go and reference that information. But the interesting part is, what about the trees that weren't referenced? And that only gives me the indication that all of these trees are correspondents to stars. Like, again, in places like this, there's multiple trees of different species. And I don't think that we're at leisure at all writing off any of the information that nature has to provide as not, that's just a tree. But the fact is also is that if we properly were able to splice that tree properly, or meaning take just the leaf and open it up and see the essence within it, we will find somehow that congruent with the same elements that are found on the corresponding stars. And so,
okay. Can I interject right there? Because that's good. I totally understand that. I'm gonna stretch it out some, as in my name, Kyle. Okay, as my brothers and sisters been calling me that as like family nickname, forever. And I really started letting people, outside my family and business call me Kyle. So after the vision and everything, did more research on my name, and now I know that Kyle in Greek, know what it means in Hebrew, but in Greek it means matter. Actually it means matter. Okay, so the splicing of the tree you're saying, as in that's the light, and then forming into, a being, the matter in that, is it the, I don't know if I should be asking that as a question, but is it the moving of the motion and action, or can it be still that, still in the thought of it, to still conform the matter? Is that the effective for it? Oh no!
I'm getting it partially, but I really believe that what we're really discussing is the interconnectedness. It's like basically everyone has a tree. It's still here. You know what I mean? And if it's trying to track that thing down, and that brings us to another subject that I actually wanted to talk about on the show, which was, and I'm glad you brought that up, which was if you were here in a past life, or maybe even last life, why can you not find your stuff now?
Right.
That's not really, that's 70, 80 years ago, so your stuff really should still kind of be somewhere. And I started to think about this, and then I came more to the conclusion that they say that there is a period in time in which you go in between cycles, like that before you get into the next cycle. And I said, well, where are you at during that time? You may be in your tree. You may be in your cocoon. You may be basically in your ebb. You're in one position that is like the internal position. Otherwise, your next move is your external position. And this may be, again, like when we really look at it about how much control we really have over cycles as big as Earth, it'd be just as easy as seeing how difficult it is for you to bend a very big tree. You're not going to even be able to really move it. So that's how I guess the level of respect that we have to begin to establish with this interconnectedness, and that goes right into Betty's question in the chat box, which is, how do you understand what planet or star that you come from? The real connection becomes, no one can tell you that. You have to hear that from in the inside. And from what we've discovered, you have to basically get yourself clear enough and connected enough, meaning the cleansing and the balance of the body, the stillness of the mind, the meditation. That is actually where the channel comes on and it begins to respond. Because other than that, one has accepted the knowledge and the teachings and the essence and the energy from a particular culture or a particular tree. Now, it's also very clear to see that in magic, there's a lot about the wand, and there's a lot about in mythology certain trees that are still here on the earth, and they say there's one in particular that was fought over during the Celtic tradition, and they had to chop down the tree, and then they didn't realize how deep the tree's roots were, and then people still go to that spot to do the ritual, etc. But it means that there's these trees that have always been communicating. But the interesting part is that we see that there was a major communication, obviously, in the old days between the trees and the animals, and then for some reason that communication was disturbed. I mark this as the same time as around the Tower of Babel, that there seemed to be a cutoff of information. So I believe personally that this electromagnetic grid, this electromagnetic activity coming from some of the ruling planets is what's causing the disconnection between us and other things. For better lack of words, even sometimes because we didn't appreciate when we had that level of communication. Because communication is everything, and this is what I was already talking about the other day just in regards to a business idea. But the fact is, they'll tell you money's everything, but it's not. Communication's everything, because you can't get money unless you know how to communicate. You see, there's a communication and some type of, even if the communication is just measurements, that's communication. So because everything is about communication, if for some reason our communication has been tampered with, that becomes the number one reason why we don't know what we know, we don't have what we have, we're supposed to have, etc. And so that's where we're reestablishing this communication right around the time in which it appears that the communication channels are going to become straight through some type of cosmic plan, more so than our own plan of building towers and things of that nature. It's never stopped us at any point, however, from actually sending out our signal or amplifying our signal. And that was something that we talked about in about 3 or 4 shows a while back. But that you're sending out this frequency. If you cover your ears, you can hear that frequency. That is your connectedness. But because it's so low, that shows you exactly how much you're really vibrating or really buzzing. And you can bring that frequency up. And then what literally happens is almost like a beam coming from the top of your head, shooting out into the stars and ping-ponging across the whole communication network. As we know, each person is like a dot, and the spirit it moves from one to the other. But basically, you'll be able to call and dial into your home. You'll be able to phone home, for better lack of words. Understand, what we're looking at is that the discommunication is, the lack of communication is actually coming from our culture. The eating the meat, that's definitely going to make the communication. It's that maybe you will only hear things from Mars if you started to become the carnivore person, if you started to become the wolf, for better lack of words. And so your whole idea is dualistic. And you see what I mean? So there's these connections that have come, and I really believe, like, ultimately, and this is going to be one of the more graduated states, but the last state of a human here, like, let's say you went on the quest of being the ultimate monk, and this doesn't mean it's necessary for a person to even to do this to obtain higher spirituality, but if you just wanted to do it all, you would have no desire, and a desire would be first salt. It's interesting to understand the covenant that they're saying about Cedar or Saturn, when it went nova, it actually shot its seeds in the ocean and then made the ocean salty. That's what causes the salinization. And they say that how you would know that you're not from the salt planet is that you can't drink salt water. But for those who hang around it all the time, like surfers, those who like ship, all those words that begin with the S, it means they have some Saturnalian within them. And so what literally happens is that this, but if you notice, salt becomes the beginning of desire. It also becomes the beginning of the lack of your senses. Because the more salt that a person has to take into their diet, the more dulled out the rest of their senses become. And to the point where they can't even taste the food without the salt. And so it's almost the same connection that we have with the ear candle. If you ear candle your ear, all your five senses increase because when you plug your ears, your senses go down. The same thing as when you cover your nose, you can't taste. So there's all of these different things that are actually interconnected, just like our connection to that tree, that we have to rediscover communication with, or else we're doomed. And that's all it really means. It's almost like there is no or else. It was always everyone's responsibility to do this, whether they knew it or not. But unfortunately, many people have been leaving this planet bearing no fruit. So we know that it can happen, but we know that there's many people who have done amazing things on this planet, and their fruit is that we won't forget them. And it's important because that allows you to be connected. We've forgotten the names of the trees. Like I said, they asked Adam to name everything. They asked the atomic particle, the actual prototype for the universe, to actually distinguish everything after that and to show its distinctions. It says that the beauty is not in the atom, it's actually in when you get close to it and what's happening with it. That's where you'll find it. And many of us have never even really seen that. And so, but this is to us like we've taken it as youth. We've taken it as, okay, we could go back to school and learn again, rather than sitting back and acting like this religion that we've just came off of is going to deliver any type of truth to us that we need now. It was able to get people 2,000, 3,000 years ago to the stage that we're at now. But what the world is needing is people who can pick up that cloth or carry the cloth, as they say, put the innovativeness on it, put back to it what was originally there before the dabbling into things that didn't have anything to do with us going forward started to really become a hobby. And like I see about 100 or 200 years worth of nothing but dark magic in the grimoires. And that period, as we see, has obviously been over. So we can go back and forth about whether it was a good thing that we lost our memory or not, but it doesn't even matter because we lost it. Now we have an opportunity to actually gain it back. And what we're actually gaining back is a lot of our origin and things of that nature. So what becomes the most important is to remember your lessons. Because when it comes calling, like they say, the horde of the Sumerians, when it calls, no Sumerian can resist. Prove them wrong. What this means is that the moment, after a while, when you figure out you're really Venusian or you figure out you're really Martian or whatever, still remember the knowledge that you learned here on Earth and create your 13th, 12th, or whatever, or 6th planet. And create your next field. Don't get stuck in that field like, oh, I'm from Saturn, so I might as well go ahead and worship Saturn. You're losing the point. The thing was that I would only assume that all of our parents, in being gravitated towards a positive field, if they ever were to birth anything, which you have to be. Still remember the two directions. One direction grows into fertility and goes into an abundance, and another direction goes into nihilism and nothing. And people have chosen different paths. Personally, I want to go into abundance because I still think there's so much more to be learned. I learn stuff every single day before I finally see the value in nothing, which I have not yet seen. And so this is the grand quest that we're actually on. And I definitely want to thank you for calling in. We only have like 5 minutes up on the show. We have one more person that has a question. I wanted to also, I know that you are I know you're probably a part of the resistance side. I wanted to welcome you to start a post on that so I can at least start sourcing some of this stuff that I do hear about this, that I do have about this connection between humans and trees.
Okay. I do that. I will do that.
Okay.
Oh, all right now.
Again for calling in, brother. And I'm now going to take the caller. Your last four digits of your line is 1560, area code 405. You had your hand up. Do you have a question?
Yes. How you doing, Sevan? This is Mark Kane. How you doing?
I'm doing exceptionally well. Mark, how are you doing?
I'm doing pretty well myself. Thank you.
All right.
Yeah, I was calling. I was interested about when you was talking about the Kundalini energy, that's Christ, that's the Kundalini, and I had been researching, and I heard somewhere about as far as like the menstrual, how a woman's menstrual is the elixir for the man and the woman to raise the Kundalini, the Christ energy. So I was wondering if that's somehow connected.
Well, it's definitely connected, and like I always say, it's exactly the thing that we're thinking about is exactly going on, but not exactly the way we're thinking it. Basically, it's the same idea of being able to eat an animal and inherit its power, when you can probably just sit down next to that animal in a deep meditation and communicate or follow and watch that animal, and it will teach you how it operates and how it can see and how. You see what I mean? And so basically what happened with the whole, the menstruation blood in the Holy Grail, which is what, there was one term for the Holy Grail, which was a woman's menstruation fluid being magnetic, and that if a woman was groomed properly, then that magnetic menstruation fluid could be drunk, and thus the person would inherit the power, or the magnetic power that would turn on their Kundalini system. Now, is this true or is this not true? First of all, I will always say that the practices of such things still should be in question about what it will bring about in this time, meaning that everything is still calibrated for the time in which it was brought forth. So individuals being encouraged to drink vaginal fluids at this point may not be a good idea. In addition to that, what is it that man cannot inherit from the woman what is it that man cannot inherit from the woman without not sitting and listening to her? Basically, in sitting and communicating with her, meditating with her, there's the same connection that would exist between us and the animals, where whatever woman's ability is, we could inherit, just like whatever man's ability is, a woman has a chance to inherit. This is where that whole idea of the shape-shifting really came from, was that a person could watch another individual's traits because they knew exactly what to watch for, and they could actually breathe in the essence, because if you notice that each flower gives off a different essence. Some flowers, you put them in a room and it can poison you. Some flowers, they smell very well. But all this means is that the spores or the actual pollen of these flowers are filling the whole area. So what I'm getting at here is that there's an essence that comes off of all of us, and if a person can turn on your Kundalini, if you actually were in front of a woman that has the power and energy to turn on Kundalini, if it was in her menstrual fluid, it would also be in her palms, because that is the energy that corresponds to Kundalini. But if someone has taken it from like the Crowleyism, which is definitely a profanity of the esoteric knowledge, and only focused on the tantric sexual magic inside the star, the woman doesn't matter if it's in her will or not, if she's been chosen. These are all corruptions of the original knowledge. The original knowledge was to never really ingest I can explain this in an even easier term. It's the difference between vaporizing something and just burning something. When you vaporize, you're at a whole different temperature. So when you meditate and you're collecting essence, what you're actually collecting is the purest part of the individual. When you're smoking or when you're drinking blood, you're only inheriting basically the waste. They say anything, but it still has the essence of the person in them, but it's still a waste. They say anything that actually becomes ejected from the body and is externalized from the body is the waste of the body. And it's the pure essence that still remains within, as in a little vial, like a real elixir.
Right.
And so I definitely find that women have the capability, when they're tuned in and turned on, to be able to transfer Shakti, which is basically where the woman activates her system, and then she just touches the individual, and that's where the laying on hand things kind of came into play. But it's basically touching an individual and transferring that energy to them. And it only becomes very political if a person's carrying a spirit and they're just transferring that spirit to another person. Is that positive or negative because of the influence the spirit may have over that person, which is different. Some people that's why there's so many different religions, because there's certain gods that are partial to certain kinds of people. As you see in the Old Testament, there's chosen people even. But even in other books, different gods say, these are my people. And it's because what they're saying is that this religion is more compatible for them. you should look at it more then on a scientific level, that if you try to add the wrong things into a small space or a petri dish, then it won't work properly. So you have to analyze every single thing that is done for the situation in which you're telling the people that it's for. You see what I mean?
Right.
So that should bring a little bit more clarity to it.
Yes, it does. It kind of, I guess it's kind of similar to, as well, I was doing some research about how they are using holographic images of DNA of, let's say, a salamander, and they're projecting it to a different breed of lizard, and it is taking on that salamander's DNA and changing completely.
For sure. And then imagine when a person was capable of doing that with their mind, and then you understand the beginning of things where man knew the words, like he knew the two-part words. Notice there's two syllables in certain words. That means two symbols. And that also gets us to one other part that I almost missed on today's show, which is the antithesis. Basically, the powerful gods, and we're still using that term because that's the term everyone else used for them, have their antithesis built within their name, meaning they have their opposite built within their name. So Al's backwards name is La. So Allah cancels itself out because two waves are firing at each other, and thus the God remains out of time or on fourth dimension. This is deeper knowledge. If you look at words like Yahweh, the original name of the prince or the Hebrew God, Yah is in Hey is Yah is Hey forward. So it's the same thing, but basically an antithesis. And this is what everyone also has to understand. Your twin flame star, whatever they want to call it, your higher self, actually is the opposite of you. All of your weaknesses are its strengths, but your strengths are its weakness. And that's why you're here, because its weakness is density. Like if it's supposed to be your higher self, then it can't really even touch anything lower. It needs you to come and do that, or it becomes the lower self and you become the higher self. But many times what I've learned personally in my personal life is that you can combine the two, but you are more or less a graduated being on this dimension. But there's basically a lot of head games that are played with you before that ever starts, because there's the whole idea of when you are ultra purified getting dirty. This is like, that has to be overcome. It is clearly a big stage in a lot of people's growth. The big stage in my growth is definitely when you have a certain level of knowledge, can you really go back into the trenches and pick some people up out of there? And it takes training to get to that point. And so, but yeah, man, I mean, this is definitely a really good time for us as far as how much we're capable and can learn right now. That's going to definitely prove results for us. And that's why it doesn't matter what's going to happen in 2012. It doesn't matter. If all that stuff just motivates me to download everything that I can and read it now. So it's only helping me, because I still understand one basic thing. The more of truth that you feel your core with, then, because in the core of things, the core is the balance. On the opposite end, like on the left and on the right, or on the Venus, on the Mars, on all these different poles or the points of your stars, those are the opposites that you have. But in your core, that's where all of the truth is really kept. And so the more of the truth that you gather, the larger your core becomes. And then what happens is, it doesn't matter if there's electromagnetic waves coming through. You won't be the one that forgets your core. And so that, and that also was talked about in the Code of the Matrix. Right. And so yeah, brother, I mean, if you don't have any more questions, I'll definitely we have one more caller left, but if you do, go ahead and speak.
I'm good. I appreciate your time, man. Thank you very much.
Oh, no doubt. And I know I'll see you also on the Resistance as always.
Oh, yes. Thank you very much.
The other thing is, I also want to reveal one of the other names of Saturn is T. And I can show you Egyptian pictures of T, and T is not a bearded god. I believe personally that what happened with Saturn was originally of a melanated skin tone and bred and seeded everything. So people can take that as far as they really want to take it. But the actual original name is T, and that's where you get the word Titan. They know the Titan was Saturn. It's T-Tan. Tan means a group, or it also means a serpent. And the melanated Nagas, etc. So if people really want to find the truth is actually here. It's about whether they can handle the truth or not.
Yeah, that's right.
And then again, the other thing is that if everyone digs deep enough, they're going to find something that very fast, especially if you're looking in the past, expect to see darkness because you just came from a womb. You're going to see things that may be a little disgruntled to you, but that's only so that you can repair it. And we have been tattooed, marked, and everything with those names. Like I'll be looking at my name sometime, and I run off into the bathroom somewhere and be like, "Yo, this is all about." But the fact is, that's how you face it. We wear our names like we wear our clothes. And so I definitely want to say wholeness and balance to you, brother. I do appreciate you calling in, and I'll be talking to you in a little bit, Mr. Kane.
All right. Well, thank you very much, Sevan.
All right. Okay, so we have one more caller. We have about 3 minutes remaining in the show. If you want to ask a quick question, this caller will be coming from area code 305-3110. And, What's up?
How we doing, Sevan? Just wanted to send wholeness and balance vibrations out to everyone. And at the same time, can you hear me?
Yeah, I can hear you clearly.
Okay. Just wanted to send wholeness and balance vibrations out to everyone. And I'm here riding down, heading south in Florida with the family, tuning into the show. And I just had a special request to see if we can have a show on activating the children and homeopathic medications and the right diets and the right types of information that we can relay to our seeds so they can bear their fruit and become much more powerful than we can become. Every generation has their chance, and we definitely want to pass along the right information and the right guidance, as you mentioned.
For sure. So why don't we just agree now that, next week is the Activated Body Show. Muna will be forward and delivering a lot, and then what we'll have her do is just kind of cater the show around those topics because she's always looking for input. And we can definitely have something very nice, especially for the children, in order to get them completely activated because this whole experience is more than a business. And so we can do something of getting more of a regimen down so that people can understand exactly what they need to do, where they need to begin.
Wonderful. And that's a special request here from my brother and his wife listening into the show, and they'll definitely be in touch with you hopefully sometime this week on some suggestions and some tips, and you know how Jorge can enlighten you in some direction every now and again.
For sure. I'm always looking forward to tell him I said definitely with your wife.
Excuse me?
Okay, so we have exactly 90 seconds remaining in the show. And so I just wanted to say to everyone, I really do appreciate everyone being here. Keep tuning in. As I said, I'm always learning. As information gets more cohesive, I can bring it to you. When I finally can get to a plateau where the information is completely solid, then I could actually write about it and really bring it so that it's crystal clear through video, through audio, etc. I wanted to thank Mr. Spirit Matter out there, Pablo. I wanted to thank all the supporters of the Resistance, the moderators that are doing their job around the clock. And I wanted to also thank Brother Gary for putting out that post, and also all the contributors. And I want everyone to know that they have this opportunity to do this for themselves. You came into the world through the womb. You're not alone, but everything is connected to you in a way, if it's positive for you, that it wants you to do it. It doesn't want to do it for you. That's the whole idea. And you already died, so you already became two, and you have both of those parts still within you. And if we take our children and we raise them in the proper way, then it's not a mystery at all that we'll be living through them when we pass from this frequency into definitely something higher. Soul is very similar to a seed. A seed belongs to a certain plant, but it now has this opportunity to become a plant. It's not the plant yet. It just has the opportunity to become that. And so that's why solo is very congruent with alone or by yourself, because you're still a spore or a piece of the whole, but you have the opportunity to develop the whole thing. So within everyone, there's an opportunity for them to not only develop their own world, but also to create a 13th planet or a 12th planet or whatever number of planets they're saying in the constellation, one more, which is one that you create. And it has all of what you've pulled from each of these planets as a lesson. And I began to understand this when I was looking very carefully at the names of the week that we have and how certain planets were chose to be those names of the week. And if a situation began to occur where a new planet was known, then the only thing that planets like Earth would do is just add another day to their cycle, because that planet would move into our system. It would change the elliptical orbits and timings and machinations and things of that nature. And then the people would have no choice but to add another day into their calendar or into their week, because there would be a new body that would appear in their sky, a new sun, for better lack of words. And so this is very important to start to realize, because what we've seen in the past is before that actually happens, like when a new planet is coming into the universe to teach its lessons, etc., or for the universe to teach it lessons, it has to make room. And sometimes that planet collides or comes into conflict with other planets and other ideas of thought and ways of being and cultures and groups of people and nations. But we all have to share this galaxy, and we all have to share this space that we've been given. And there's plenty of space, but that's not the situation. The situation is not whether we have enough space to house the life here. How much space we have can be seen in the stars, and how much just dark matter is out there. It's a matter of how much space do you have to put in between these stars so they don't come into conflict. It's like he can't be around her, or they can't be around each other, because the moment that they're around each other, there's an igniting that happens. So many people who chose the scientific path have only looked at this from only the planetary standpoint of when a meteor may collide and things like of that nature, but they look at none of the essences, which is what people that were deep into the spirituality already understood about, which was that if a person's been coerced or conned or enticed or whatever to begin to live a certain culture, it will not be long before that person gets transferred to where that culture actually truly resides. Meaning, if you are practicing Martian culture, after this life you will be going to Mars. If you are practicing Venusian culture, you'll be going to Venus. If you practice all cultures in balance, then you have a passport to the universe. So it's about, again, cycling your energy through these chakras or planets and not getting stuck. So I found out basically that Venus is left to us, which is the left-hand path, and Mars is right to us, which is the right-hand path. Mars is known in the ancient texts as the wolf star, which is probably where the story of the werewolf comes from, because its defeat and triumph over Venus at one point, which is where the story of the vampire comes from, in an eclipse. Now, it's interesting that we will bring up, because these are really two adverse type beings and definitely mutants, if a person imagines that vampires and werewolves actually exist, which we found out to be true. But we also have discovered now that when the germination from other planets hit our surface, it actually creates a mutation. And this is what's been going on for a prolonged period of time. There's a germination or a germ from another planet. And that's always been the fear of this planet, is being exposed to viruses, such as the Andromeda Strain movie points out, that are abundant in the space, and our planet being affected by them. And that's why we have layers to our planet. There's all these different atmospheres to keep different things out and to filter different things out, so that finally when you get to the surface, the creatures that live on the surface, such as the humans, the animals, are extremely protected by all these atmospheres until they get to a level of being able to deal with what's outside there. Now, when you have to keep someone under protection, then it does become the pre-Zion. It becomes somewhat of a prison, especially when you're also in there with other bad cellmates, other cells that are not really habitable for the body or the group of that we're all in. So what happens is that someone has to come through, or something has to come through to start to immunize. It has to start to purify. It has to start to shape up cells. And it does that by teaching other cells, hey, this is what it could be like. This is what shape you could be in if you start doing this. So the first thing that I want to bring forward is that wholeness and balanced vibration to everyone, and thank you for tuning in to Esoteric Radio. Today is Sunday, June the 5th, and we have quite a show today. Actually, we're lined up for an hour and 30 minutes. The time was increased just to give us a chance to get this message compressed in such a short amount of time. Today's show, the title is The Antithesis, Where You Go When You Die. And today, I definitely wanted to introduce a new form of instruction or a new form of teaching, basically in light of a lot of the things that I've learned within the last 2 weeks. And it's really impressive that when you have a certain amount of information, there's certain pieces that can put the whole puzzle together for you that would otherwise be non-cohesive or very difficult to actually understand what's actually going on. And I know I've been getting tons of emails from just various types of people, and I know personally that the resistance is full of the universe. It's full of individuals from various places, and I see an obligation personally to make sure that everyone understands what they are and what they can be. And in that, it's made me universal. I first wanted to start today's show by defining the word universe. Everyone's familiar, the word uni means one or together, and the word verse means actually against. It means a challenge. And it's important to realize that because the actual situation that we're dealing with is everyone is together sharing a collective reality, but there's many conflicts that are going on in that reality. In addition, I wanted some clarity to come from where we originated, which is what we're going to be talking about today in this show, where each person originated from and what they are at this point so that they can know what they're supposed to become. And that starts with the very interesting story. I always say that if the story can be truly interesting, then it would involve you and it would involve me because that would draw our attention. And so today I really want people to understand that this story is about you. And this is a story that's known by some of the highest levels of some of the people that are involved in the highest level of information. And to understand, again, if it's a secret society, it means it's still a secret. All the other societies that, like Masonry and Illuminati, those aren't secret societies. They're not secret. So the fact is that there are many societies that no one knows the names, no one knows the terms, their colleges are invisible, and they're continuing to give instruction to their seeds. And I wanted to explain the actual status of a soul because both go by the name El. And if you notice within those names, Jupiter and Saturn, neither one of those planets have the name El in them. And it's because El is a term that's just given to a sun. And so when it says the Elohim, it's still not being descriptive enough because it's saying the suns got together. We still have to figure out which suns were doing it. So it's important to understand this because that's where we're going to begin today, is we're going to begin in starting to point out what one planet is responsible for and what another planet is responsible for. And this will actually help you in your chakra centers also to allow those chakra centers to warm up so that they can become malleable, so that you can actually mold them into the stones, into what you need them to be. We already discovered that the chakra center is a positive and a negative. It moves in both directions. So what is the positive part of having a chakra center? Well, if they're activated and they're balanced and they're open, you will become a super being. If they are blocked and closed and you're sealed by them, you become under the control of something else, or you're not accessible to a certain visual spectrum. So what's literally happening is that we have to learn how to not only bring the fire back into our bodies, and this is the passion and the activation and want to go and do something, but we also have to have the knowledge of what exactly we need to shape our power into being. What use does it really have? What are you doing with it? And this is going to determine how your seeds grow, because every day you're planting seeds. And you're responsible, just like when a man enters a woman, if he does not take care of himself properly, then it will reflect on the child. The child will be weaker. And so the idea here is for you reap what you sow. So it's very important to watch what you're putting out, because you got to eat from that. So this becomes no one else's responsibility but your own. And it's very imperative that you understand these lessons now, because the only reason why these lessons are coming across is because we're about to hit another point where a collision is going to happen. And I want to explain about these collisions in regards to transmutation first. Everyone should understand at this point that a person does not just remain a human for all of their existence. There's a certain amount of time and allotment for them to enjoy a particular cycle or learn from the cycle or fear the cycle. Whatever happens, you're still going through the cycle. So with Earth in particular, it's given us the opportunity to become humans and to be humans. In that, we learn all the lessons that we can, and then we transmute into something next. And so that gets us into the title of the show. Where do we go when you die? Well, this one becomes very simple when you sit down and think about it. Each of these planets are giving off an essence that is more or less a seed of germination. And when you collide with one, or when one of them hits you with their rays, at that point, a seed, even if it's just a thought and an idea, begins to grow within you. And according to that planet, wherever that seed came from, its particular cycle, it will tell you exactly how long it's going to take for that idea or for that seed to germinate and grow within you and without you. So I noticed something very interesting also about the time and the dimensions as I'm going deeper into just this deeper thought or quantum thought. If you are something of an insect, or let's say a fly or something that's buzzing, the amount of heartbeats per second versus the size versus the size of the planet, the gravitational pull, all alters time. So what may be 4 days for you, meaning that we see that a fly or insect generally has a 4-day, 5-day lifespan, some of them longer, is a long period of time, maybe 400 or 500 years for that particular being, because of how fast its heart is moving, the actual frequency it's on, which you can hear through its buzz and sound, etc. And so what I find here is that these laws of nature were more finite and more exact to actually go by than all of the laws that man and woman were producing when they were in their stage of forgetfulness, or the yuga they call it a yuga of darkness. But we now want to know, well, what caused that darkness? What causes a massive memory loss within the complete amount of sentient species, at least that we have contact with, meaning what actually could erase everyone's mind at one point and have everyone starting over? And so now I've come with the answers to those questions, not just based on one-line answers, but multiple examples of how it redundifies in our actual field, our field that we're living in. And so what's most important now to understand is that many people are confusing also what other planets are doing for what other planets are doing. So what Saturn is doing is being confused as what Jupiter's doing, and what Mars is doing is being confused for what Venus is doing. And this is all coming about because people don't understand the information that I'm revealing to you today. What goes on between these planets is that there's a term with the masculine planets that's just called L. So L has nothing to do with whether it's Jupiter or whether it's Saturn or whether it's a certain planet, even though Jupiter and Saturn